Hello, Tom Maguire. I just want to do a quick review on the fantastic book that I've just read, Breathe, A Life in Flow by Rickson Gracie, co-written by Peter Maguire. Maguire, good name. I'm biased, obviously. There's a foreword by Jocko Willink as well, which is really good. I listened to the audio version. I'm going to buy the paperback as well. I absolutely love this book. I've listened to and read some fantastic books just recently. Kindred was the last one I listened to, which was a Neanderthal book. I've done a review on that one. I'm now listening to Dave Grohl's memoir, biography as well. But this one, Breathe, A Life in Flow, Rickson Gracie, absolutely fantastic. It's really, really good. I can't recommend it enough. Really good audiobook. So yeah, I really loved it. I'm not an MMA fan particularly. I'm one of those people. I'm a bit kind of traditional. I quite like boxing. I enjoyed the recent Tyson Fury fight. I love his fights. I've always been a little bit funny about jiu-jitsu as well. It comes purely from ignorance. I've always kind of thought that standing toe to toe and exchanging punches is kind of the proper way to fight, and manipulating people's joints and stuff isn't necessarily. But this book has completely changed my mind on that. I think jiu-jitsu is now fantastic now that I've done a bit of research and I've listened to this book. But even though I'm not an MMA fan, I do have a huge amount of respect for anyone who is hugely self-disciplined, put themselves on the line, hugely dangerous sport, getting beaten around the head. You've got to be extremely tough to do that sort of stuff. And Rickson Gracie is just basically, one of the toughest, one of the best, basically. And this book is just really, really interesting. Even if you're not interested in fighting and that kind of sport, you can learn some really good lessons from this book. And this channel is mainly around personal development. It's me reading as many books and listening to as many books as possible. I'm always trying to improve myself through reading. I love reading. I love listening to good books. I want to pass the knowledge on to my children. I do these reviews so that my kids can have a bit of an idea of the stuff that I read over the years and have a bit of a laugh at me as well, trying to be a YouTuber. So yeah, my reviews are always honest. No one's paying me. I've got no reason to lie. I give my honest opinion. So this one is fantastic. Get out there and listen to it. Give it a go, or do some research on Rickson Gracie as well. He's really, really interesting. It's such an interesting story. I'm just going to read something out quickly that I read a minute ago, actually, from Rickson Gracie. So he said that I've devoted my entire life to jiu-jitsu and recently had a revelation larger and more profound than the techniques and all of my accomplishments combined. The art's most beneficial aspects cannot be seen or taught because they are mental, not physical. Jiu-jitsu changes an individual's perception and the way one deals with life's opponents. Despair, low self-esteem, and a lack of motivation can all be defeated by the invisible jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu teaches you how to survive on the mat and thrive in the world, Rickson Gracie. I really like that. And that's kind of what I find so exciting and interesting about it. He says that it's a philosophy. It's not just about hurting people and being physically tough and aggressive and all that. It's a philosophy that he took into life. And it's also really interesting because he talks about being imperfect and flawed, and he seems very self-reflective. And he seems very intelligent as well, which I think is actually probably a large part of how he became quite so successful. You get a lot of fighters who, they come in, they're macho, they're big tough guys, they've got a point to prove, they want to win. And time again, he kind of showed them how it should be done by being someone who had that flow, who had that kind of ability to kind of control their mind, control their ego, and control their pride. And that's, I think, from the little I know about him, from only listening to this book and doing a quick bit of research, I think that's what made him so successful. So yeah, you can learn a lot from this book massively. The intro by Jocko Willink is good as well. And apparently Peter Maguire, the guy with the good name, apparently he is working on a potential biopic at the minute as well, which would be really interesting. I'd love to see that. That's something that could be on Netflix fairly soon, hopefully. Apparently he's been his student and friend for about 25 years as well. I read a minute ago. So yeah, and I think Peter Maguire's done some other books that I'll be looking at as well fairly soon. So that sounds very interesting. So I'll do a review at some point on one of his. So yeah, he talks about the Gracie clan and his family, his dad and grandparents, and how they moved to America from Scotland originally, and how they had this kind of warrior ethic and principle in their family, code in their family. And he just grew up wanting to be the best. He just grew up wanting to be the best Gracie, possible. They came from Dumfries in Scotland originally, moved to the Americas in the 1700s. And he gave a nice message as well around not putting too much pressure on young people. He didn't put too much pressure on his kids in terms of getting into jiu-jitsu and stuff, and kind of seeing these parents who scream at their kids and thinking, why would you want to perform if your parents are just screaming at you and putting that pressure on? So he gave some really good kind of parental advice as well, I think. Like I say, he's quite self-reflective. So he talks about being unfaithful to his wife and splitting up with her, and how it was kind of in his family in a way to not really appreciate women, not really appreciate their role necessarily, and how he came to realise that his wife was, he couldn't have done it without her, basically. But he sort of says, maybe there was still a bit of him in there that, wasn't able to keep the relationship going, which is interesting to hear. His son died as well, and I found this to be one of the most powerful part of the book as well, where he basically said that he kind of turned his back on the traditional Gracie kind of stoicism and positivity, and actually just allowed himself to be vulnerable and fragile and cry with his family for a period of time. He gave up on the exercise, he gave up on the discipline stuff, and just wanted to stay at home and just talk to each other about the memories they had of his son and stuff, and how that just really beat him up, basically. So that was really nice to hear that as well, because the whole way through he's kind of this almost godlike sort of tough guy, really. So to hear his kind of vulnerability at the end, I think that's really important when you get someone that successful to sort of be vulnerable and sort of show people that actually life does kick you in the balls sometimes, and no matter how stoic you are or self-disciplined you are, sometimes you just don't have the answers. So I found that really important. And I talk to unpaid carers quite a lot in my work, and you speak to people about positivity and having a strong mental attitude and coping with stress and all that sort of stuff, and you can give them all techniques, stoicism, personal responsibility, all that stuff that helps and that works. But sometimes you're just talking to people that are so broken and so knackered, they're just sick of trying to be disciplined and so stoic and positive, and they just want to be given a break, and they're just done. They're caring for someone they love, and there's just nothing working. Their health is deteriorating and everything. So actually, the most stoic, toughest human being occasionally just needs to kind of break to a certain extent and just cry and just deal with things. And he says something about he had to allow himself to become fragile and have to break down and then be kind of reborn, put together again as a different person, which again, I find that really interesting. I think when it comes to our personal development, we have to kind of let the dead wood kind of burn off, as Jordan Peterson says, and kind of break away and become new, become kind of reborn again sometimes. We can't just hold on. We have to accept that we change. And I guess part of the title, flow, being in flow, being in that ever state of movement and change all the time. Really, really interesting. His philosophy as well around the way he went into fights. He didn't go in wanting to win necessarily. He just wanted to defend his honour. He'd have been prepared to die at certain stages, and people inflicting pain on certain joints and part of his body and stuff, and just being able to take himself away with his breathing techniques and his kind of meditative state, where he's just able to sort of take himself to another place and just never ever submit. It was really, really interesting. So yeah, fantastic book. I really, really do recommend this one. I'm going to do a bit more research on Rickson Gracie and all of that. I'll probably show more of an interest now in MMA and Jiu-Jitsu in particular. I know that Joe Rogan talks about Jiu-Jitsu and Jocko Willink as well, talk about how important it is. And I've got young kids, so if they ever show any kind of interest in stuff like that, then I would definitely support them with that as well. I think martial arts, if you've got the right mindset and you've got the right philosophy behind it, I think it's really important. I think it's really good, really worthwhile. But this is just a fantastic book. Audio version was brilliant. I'll be getting the paperback soon as well. It's definitely one that I will come back to time and again. So thanks very much for listening. Please keep liking and subscribing, and I'll keep the reviews coming. Cheers.